God has given us the weapon of prayer, but are we using it? And if so, are we using the weapon of prayer appropriately? I hope that you'll take a moment to join me for this week's very important Sunday school lesson. Hello there, wonderful people. I am Pastor McCrary, and thanks for joining me for this week's Sunday school lesson where we are taking a look at a very important subject. We're going to be taking a look at prayer, the importance of prayer, why we should pray, and who it is that we should pray for. We're taking a look at Paul's first epistle to Timothy, his first letter to Timothy. We're taking a look at the second chapter is what we're going to cover. But what I do want to point out here at the start of our lesson this week is there in the first verse where we see the word therefore. Therefore, it connects us to the previous chapter. It connects us to the first chapter, where in the first chapter, we'll see where he reminded Timothy to move with love from a pure heart, to move in sincere faith. Then by the end of the first chapter there, we'll see in the 18th and in the 19th verse where Paul, he had charged Timothy. Paul, he charged Timothy to wage the good warfare using the sound doctrine that Paul had taught to him. Now, to wage the good warfare, that speaks to our higher calling as believers, where you and I, we who are of sincere faith, we are to minister. That is, we are to share the gospel, the good news of God's salvation with all of those who are around us. We are to strive to fulfill God's desire, where the Lord, he desires for all souls who receive the gospel. He desires for all souls to be saved. He does not desire for any soul to be condemned. He does not desire for any soul to perish. So in order for us to wage the good warfare, we'll see there in the opening verse of our lesson this week, where Paul exhorted Timothy to use the weapon of prayer for all people in supplication, intercessions, and in the giving of thanks. Now, in this verse, Paul, he's speaking of three different kinds of prayer. He speaks of the prayer of supplication, he speaks of the intercessory prayer, and then he speaks of the prayer of thanksgiving. Now, if you aren't familiar with these kinds of prayers or with what those words may mean, let's jot down a few notes here. Supplication is a show of one's dependence on seeking God, where one prays to the Lord for the Lord to supply their every need. Intercession is when one steps in on behalf of another as a mediator or as an advocate. And then the giving of thanks, that one should be obvious, but the giving of thanks, it shows one's gratitude and appreciation for God's love, his grace, his goodness, his givings. So Paul, he was encouraging Timothy, and therefore the rest of us, all of us who are of sincere faith, he was encouraging us to pray not just for ourselves, but to take a moment to pray for all of those who are around us. We should pray for God to supply and to provide for the needs of all of those who are around us. We should take a moment to intercede on the behalf of others, praying that the Lord, that as he shows us mercy, as he shows us grace, that we should pray that God, that he shows others the same kind of mercy, that he show others the same kind of grace and forgiveness as well. And then lastly, because not everybody thanks the Lord for all that he does for them, we should again intercede, we should step in, and we should give God thanks for how he moves, not just for us, but for how the Lord moves for all of those who are around us. Now Paul, he gets very specific there in the second verse. When he speaks about how we should pray for others, I want you to notice there that Paul, he also includes that we should pray for those who lead, who governs. He urged Timothy, pray for kings, pray for all who are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and reverence. Now, this speaks to the importance of prayer, which again, I believe we should jot down for some notes as well. You see, the importance of prayer is that prayer has the ability to bring about peace. And that is also us moving in our faithfulness. We said that we believe in God, that we believe in his power, so we should pray to the Lord. Yet this leads us into a controversial subject that shouldn't be controversial at all for us who are of sincere faith. There are believers who will say that there are those who they will pray for and those who they won't pray for. Does that sound right? Here's where I want to remind you that Jesus, he instructed us to love everyone, even those we consider to be our enemies. Jesus, he instructed us that we should pray for those who spitefully use us. He instructed us to pray for those who persecute us as well. Let us remember that while he was hanging on the cross, and while people was mocking him on the cross, while people were casting lots over his clothing while he was on the cross, let us remember that Jesus, he still had compassion for the people. He still loved the people. He still showed grace to the people. While he was hanging on the cross, didn't he forgive the thief that was hanging next to him? Didn't he pray for the people, those who did not know what they were doing, while they were again mocking him, making fun of him while he was dying for their sins? Jesus, he prayed for them. So to move under this notion that there are going to be those who you choose to pray for and those who you choose not to pray for this reason or for that reason, to move in such a manner that is not obedience, that is disobedience. We must not let those emotions block us from producing the fruits of the Spirit, from producing the righteousness of God. Let us keep in mind what James said. James, he said that the wrath of man, it does not produce the righteousness of God. Sadly, many believers have let the environment that they are living in today, that we are all living in today, we have let it influence us and move us to moving in a manner that will corrupt the soul and will cause us to take actions that are sinful, to behave in a manner, to conduct ourselves in a manner that is unbecoming of the way of God, to where, again, we are picking and choosing who we will pray for, who we won't pray for. We're not going to pray for this person because they have this sexual identity. We will pray for this person because they voted for this guy or they are associated with this political party. That is not our calling. Our calling, again, is to love everybody. Our calling, again, is for us to pray for everyone. I believe that our environment is the way that it is today. I believe that there is suffering in the land today because we aren't praying as we ought to pray. We aren't praying appropriately. And again, many of us, we begin to wonder, well, why aren't our prayers, why aren't they working? Well, they aren't working because we aren't praying with the love that should be in our hearts. We aren't praying in that kind of love. We aren't moving in that kind of grace. And so our prayers, they are falling short. We must correct our prayers. We must improve ourselves. We must improve ourselves. And when we improve ourselves, we can improve our prayers as well. And our prayers, they will move. They will move because they will be moving in the sincere faith that the Lord, that he desires from us. Now, in the next couple of verses there, I want you to notice there that Paul, that he spoke about how moving with compassion, praying for all, how it is acceptable in the sight of God, as God, he desires for all men to be saved. So again, when we pray, when we move, if we desire to move faithfully, you and I as true believers, we ought to keep God's will in mind. We must remember what it is that the Lord desires. Over in the 6th chapter of John's Gospel, Jesus, he told a multitude why he was in the world. He expressed that the will of him who sent him was for everyone who sees and believes in him receive everlasting life and be raised up at the last day. So when you and I, when we move in faith, when we move to fulfill God's will, we have the power to help save a soul. When you and I, when we pray out of sincere faith, Again, you and I, we have the ability to help save a soul. It is with that thought in mind that he urged Timothy there in the verse to tell people everywhere to pray without wrath and to pray without doubting. As James said, one who doubts God ought not think that he will receive anything from the Lord. He ought not think that God will move for them. We must be confident. You and I who are of sincere faith, we must be confident in our faith. We must be confident in our prayer life because, again, our belief and our faith is in who? Well, we believe in God, right? We believe that he is almighty, right? We believe that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, right? I hope so. I hope that you have that kind of faith. I hope that you move in that kind of faith. I hope that you act in that kind of faith. And again, I hope that you pray with that kind of faith because I believe that when we pray in that kind of faith, that he will move mountains for us. And again, that's why I believe that our society is in the position that it is in today, because we have not prayed as we ought to pray. We have not prayed with the kind of the faith that we should have. We should be praying today for God to do the impossible, because God, he does the impossible on a regular basis. Okay. All right. So that is our Sunday school lesson this week. I hope that you enjoyed this week's lesson. And if you want more on this, I'm about to start a series of sermons which ties into the series that I just completed, where I've been preaching about living by the word. We're moving into prayer. I'm going to spend the next 4 Sundays preaching about prayer. So if you want to dive deeper into the importance of prayer, why we must pray, and again, who we ought to be praying for, I'll have a link in the comment section that will direct you to the playlist that will be that series of sermons about prayer. So I hope that you will follow along, because prayer, it is the most important weapon that you and that we have as believers. The reason why it is so important is because it is our direct line of communication with the one who is sitting high and looking low, the one who is all powerful, the one who is almighty. You and we can't leave our most powerful weapon. We can't leave it on the shelf. No, we need to carry our most powerful weapon. We need to carry it with us at all times. So again, I hope that you enjoyed this week's lesson, and I hope that you'll tune into that series of sermons as well. If you aren't already following the Newfound Faith channel, go ahead, make sure that you're following it today. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, don't be afraid to leave them in the comment section below, and I will look forward to seeing you next time.